It is a paradox that defies logic, yet stands as the defining image of American lawlessness in the 1930s. The greatest domestic threat to law and order wasn't just organized crime. It was the sheer, overwhelming firepower held by figures like John Dillinger, Machine Gun Kelly, and Bonnie Parker. Their weapon of choice wasn't the pistol or the sawed-off shotgun. It was a machine gun. The mighty Browning automatic rifle, BAR. But here is the contradiction that lies at the heart of this story. These infamous criminals, responsible for robbing banks, ambushing lawmen, and igniting the bloodiest domestic arms race in U.S. history, were not smuggling these weapons from foreign ports or stealing them from guarded military arsenals. They were acquiring them legally and openly through commercial channels, often purchasing them brand new from hardware stores, mail order catalogs, or local dealers. In a bizarre, stunning oversight of outdated legislation, the US government, by failing to regulate the sale of military hardware after World War I, had essentially created the ultimate security gap, allowing the very tools of modern warfare to arm a generation of outlaws. In effect, the legal loopholes made them do it. The bar was a triumph of mechanical genius, designed by John Moses Browning, intended for the trenches of Europe. It was one of the most powerful and dependable automatic infantry weapons in the world. So how did this iconic rifle, sold commercially as the Colt Monitor, transition from being the indispensable tool of the American doughboy to the deadliest status symbol of the American gangster? How did a lapse in legal foresight transform a tactical advantage into a national crisis, forcing ordinary police officers to confront military-grade firepower with 6-shot revolvers? This is the untold, forgotten story of the weapon that was too powerful for peacetime, the legal vacuum that armed a generation of outlaws, and the desperate, bloody escalation that resulted in the complete overhaul of U.S. firearms law and the birth of the modern Armed Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. To understand the Monitor's civilian history, we must first appreciate the absolute genius and necessity of the military weapon, the BAR. The Browning automatic rifle was the brainchild of John Moses Browning, a man widely considered the greatest firearms inventor in world history. He designed the weapon specifically to address a critical battlefield need during the escalation of World War I. When America entered the Great War in 1917, the US military was critically short of light, man-portable machine guns. European armies had learned that effective infantry assault required mobile, sustained fire, a capability the US forces entirely lacked. Browning's answer, developed in extreme secrecy, was presented to military officials in 1917. The weapon, officially adopted as the M1918B AR, was revolutionary. It was chambered in the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge, the standard military round, fed from a detachable 20-round box magazine and could fire automatically. Crucially, at just 16 pounds, it was portable enough for a single soldier to carry and fire from the hip while advancing, a concept known as walking fire. This capability was revolutionary. It meant infantry assault squads could suppress enemy positions on the move, transforming light infantry tactics overnight. The M1918 bar arrived in Europe too late to have a truly decisive impact on WWI, but its reliability and power immediately cemented its status. It was rugged, gas-operated, and capable of sustained accuracy far beyond typical submachine guns of the era. The BAR was retained after the war and became the backbone of U.S. automatic infantry fire, serving through World War II, the Korean War, and beyond, a testament to the perfection of Browning's original design. With the massive military contracts winding down after 1918, the commercial manufacturer, Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company, which held the civilian rights to the design, sought to recover its investment and find a new market. They recognized the bar's raw mechanical excellence and its appeal beyond just military applications. They believed a civilian version, refined, slightly modified, and marketed for security and self-defense, could tap into a lucrative peacetime market. The stage was set for the gun to leave the trench and enter the streets. Colt aggressively marketed the civilian BAR under several names, most notably the Colt Monitor automatic machine rifle. This version was slightly shorter and lighter than the military M1918 model, designed specifically for rapid handling and maneuverability by security guards and, ironically, law enforcement. The Monitor featured a shortened barrel and a distinct, heavy pistol grip for better control in civilian environments. But the most critical feature was the internal mechanism. The Colt Monitor retained its select fire capability, meaning it could fire either semi-automatically or fully automatically, delivering sustained, devastating firepower with the same military-grade .30-06 round. This commercial offering emerged into a massive legal vacuum. At the time, the early years of the Great Depression, the United States had virtually no federal laws regulating the sale or transfer of fully automatic weapons to civilians. The interpretation of the Constitution's Second Amendment was sweeping, and there was no legal mechanism for a federal background check, waiting period, or classification of automatic arms as distinct from standard hunting rifles. The price tag, while high for an impoverished nation, was surprisingly accessible to those with criminal funds. The Colt Monitor could be purchased for around $200 to $300 in the early 1930s. To put that into perspective, the average police officer's annual salary was less than $2,000. Yet, for a successful gang robbing $1,000 or more per bank, the Monitor represented a trivial investment for an unparalleled tactical advantage. A criminal could legally walk into a well-stocked sporting goods store, pay cash, and leave with a weapon designed to win trench warfare. This ease of acquisition meant that the wealthiest, most violent criminals possessed the most advanced weaponry, while the cash-strapped local police were often still carrying six-shot revolvers and riding in unarmored cars. The law, by its silence and inaction, had inadvertently armed the criminal class. Colt had legitimately designed a security product aimed at protecting assets, but the lack of legislative foresight allowed the criminal element to acquire it, transforming the Monitor from a tool of protection into the ultimate engine of offense. The consequences of this technological and legal mismatch were immediate, bloody, and defining for the decade. The criminal underworld quickly realized the immense tactical edge provided by the BAR and its civilian variant. Criminals like John Dillinger recognized that the bar offered the perfect combination of firepower, portability, and bullet penetration to defeat early law enforcement attempts. At Resistance, Dillinger's gang famously deployed BARS during bank raids, often firing massive volleys simply to suppress and intimidate anyone who might try to intervene, ensuring swift escape. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow elevated the bar to an infamous cultural icon. Clyde, a masterful mechanic, modified bars to increase their firepower and fit them with large magazines, often mounting them inside their stolen Ford V8 sedans. They relied on the bar's power, specifically the ability of the .30-06 round to penetrate the bodies of cars and police defenses, to blast their way out of ambushes and roadblocks across multiple state lines. Their use of the bar became so notorious that the FBI used the capture of the weapons themselves as a key part of their propaganda campaigns. The Monitor's effectiveness created a brutal, one-sided arms race. Local police and sheriff's departments found themselves routinely ambushed and outgunned. The bar was not just a tool for robbery. It was an instrument for mass casualty ambushes that turned routine traffic stops into massacres. The police's traditional weapons, the shotgun and the revolver, were instantly obsolete when facing a fully automatic .3006 rifle. The public perception of the violence changed fundamentally. When police officers and innocent bystanders were being cut down by military-grade automatic weapons, the crime wave was no longer seen as a local issue. The bar, a weapon associated with victory and necessary defense, was now perceived as the ultimate symbol of domestic anarchy and federal failure. The widespread carnage fueled an unprecedented level of public fear and outcry, directly demanding federal intervention and a fundamental change in the relationship between law enforcement and weaponry. The mounting death toll and public fear finally forced a massive institutional reckoning within the U.S. Department of Justice. The agency then known as the Bureau of Investigation, BOI, precursor to the FBI, was famously unarmed at the time, dedicated primarily to white-collar crimes and investigation, not arrest and combat. This philosophy could not hold in the face of machine gun massacres. The crisis point is often attributed to the infamous Kansas City Massacre of June 1933. While waiting to transport captured criminal Frank Nash, a team of law enforcement officers, including BOI agents, was ambushed by gang members, including Pretty Boy Floyd. The ambush, conducted with overwhelming automatic fire, left 4 officers dead and shocked the nation. This single bloody event, fueled by the perception of rampant machine gun use by criminals, provided the decisive political mandate that Director J. Edgar Hoover needed. Hoover realized his agents were powerless. If they were to pursue and apprehend dangerous interstate criminals, they needed to be armed and legally empowered to operate across state lines. Armament. Hoover immediately petitioned the Attorney General to allow BOI agents to carry firearms and conduct armed arrests. This was the most radical philosophical change in the agency's history. The agents, once desk-bound investigators, became armed federal police officers. The agency quickly adopted advanced weapons, including the Thompson submachine gun and its own specialized versions of rifles and shotguns. Legislative action. Simultaneously, the Roosevelt administration pushed for immediate, restrictive firearms legislation. Congress swiftly passed the National Firearms Act, NFA, of 1934. This was the first major federal gun control law in U.S. history. The NFA did not ban automatic weapons, but it placed a prohibitive $200 transfer tax, a massive sum equivalent to over $4,500 today. on the manufacture and sale of automatic weapons, sawed-off shotguns, and other designated arms. This legislation instantly closed the legal loophole. The Colt Monitor and similar military weapons were priced out of the criminal market overnight, effectively ending the legal civilian trade of machine guns. The legacy of the Colt Monitor is complex. It represents both a peak of mechanical achievement and a disaster of legislative failure. The BAR, designed to be the ultimate weapon of the American infantry, had to be effectively taxed out of existence in its civilian form because the nation's laws could not keep pace with John Moses Browning's genius. The immediate consequence was the end of the public gangster era. The long-term consequence was the transformation of American law enforcement. The Bureau of Investigation was rebranded and restructured as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, transforming from an investigative office into a powerful armed federal police force dedicated to combating interstate crime. The firepower mismatch created by the legal sale of the Monitor served as a painful, bloody catalyst. It forced the US government to abandon its outdated 19th century policing philosophy, fundamentally rethink the commercialization of military technology, and establish the modern regulatory framework for gun control. Ultimately, the BAR didn't just arm gangsters. It forced the birth of the modern, armed FBI, proving that when the law leaves a gap, technology in the wrong hands will always rush in to fill the void. The story of the Colt Monitor is not just the history of a gun. It is the history of how a single rifle forced America to update its laws, its police, and its vision of federal power.